In this video, I'm going to show you how I print my stained glass patterns on sticker paper and cut them out using a Cricut machine. Okay, so I create all of my patterns in Procreate. This is where I draw them. So I always start out with a canvas sized 8 by 8 inches. This is the size I always use. It doesn't need to be any larger since I always print my patterns on 8.5 by 11 paper. Usually the pieces I make aren't any bigger than that, so this is all that is needed. Sometimes I will sketch on paper and then take a photo of it and bring that sketch into Procreate. For this one, I just have this quick sketch. So I use the round brush. You'll find that underneath the painting section, and it's the first one. So I always adjust the stabilization, and I keep it around 50 to 60%. And then I keep the brush at around 2 or 3%. You want to keep the lines fairly thin because they will be cut out, and you don't want too much of gap because otherwise the pieces won't fit together. Your piece will end up being smaller than you meant for it to be. So let's say this is my initial first sketch. What I will do is go over it again. So you can see here that these aren't like complete pieces and it needs to be broken up so that we can actually create the pattern. Here I have a more refined sketch. You can really make it simple or more detailed, but overall just make sure that you break up the design into pieces that you are going to be able to cut out. So now that I have this, I'm going to create a new layer and just lower the opacity of that sketch. And then here is where we're going to outline it and make sure that everything is smooth and the way that you want it to be for printing. When designing stained glass patterns, you want to be aware of hinge points, and those are when you have straight parallel lines. Those are weak points in your pattern and might not hold up in the long run, so you want to avoid having hinge points in your design. And another thing you want to think about is where you're going to be placing your jump rings if you're going to hang the piece. You always want to make sure you have a stronger area for the jump rings. So up here at the top is where I'm going to be placing a wire. So it'll be like right here. And to make sure that that area is more enforced, I have the seams right here. So you always want to place it to where a seam is so that you can incorporate the wire into the seam, and that will all get encased in solder, so it's a lot stronger. So right here is a good place to place a jump ring, but right here would not be, because the only thing it's hanging on to is that outside copper foil, and it over time, since that's where it's hanging from, it can loosen. All right, so here's my design fully outlined. So right here on the right side of this piece, it gets a little bit too thin up here. So what I'm gonna do is just thicken this piece at the end a little bit. All right, so I think I'm happy with this. So I'm just gonna go ahead and turn off the previous layers and then turn off the background as well. So now that we have the pattern drawn out, I'm just going to save it as a PNG. And now I will take this into Photoshop so it can be sized for printing. Okay, so now we're in Photoshop, and the reason I use Photoshop is to size and format it for the Cricut machine. The Cricut will only cut 6.75 by 9.25 inches, so that is the canvas size that I will create. So here's my pattern, and I'm just going to drag this over to the canvas we created. Make it a little bit bigger, When I bring this into the Cricut design space, it will resize it and it ends up stretching the image automatically. So to avoid doing that, I create a strip of color along the side and the bottom of the canvas. This way it will remain the same size when I bring it into the Cricut design space. Okay. So I'll go ahead and turn off the background and save this, export it as a PNG. Now we will upload this into the Cricut design space. And now that we have it in the canvas, we will unlock the size and enter in 6.75 by 9.25. And then put the position at 0 and 0. This is the paper that I print my patterns on. It's a weatherproof sticker paper. This way the pattern stays on throughout the grinding process. I also noticed it helps a lot to get the glass to the exact shape it needs to be because you don't have to keep going back and forth making adjustments if the paper is constantly sliding off. Once that prints, I will cut the pattern out using the Cricut. Now that we have the pattern, I print out a second one on printer paper to use as a reference. This way I always know which piece goes where and I can just place them onto the reference as I work. This brings me to the final step of creating patterns, which is numbering each piece. Again, so you can match the pieces to your reference and keep track of where everything goes. So that is how I create my sticker patterns. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. And if there are any other topics you'd like me to cover in future videos, let me know as well.